Good evening. My name is Josh Huntington with the LA County Planning Department, and welcome to the Trails at Lyons Canyon scoping meeting. We'll start in a few minutes. Good evening and welcome to the Trails at Lyons Canyon scoping meeting. We'll get started in just a couple minutes to let anyone having technical difficulties join in. Good evening, my name is Josh Huntington and I'm the subdivision section head with the LA County Department of Regional Planning. Welcome to the scoping meeting for the Lyons Canyon residential project. Thank you for participating in the environmental review process for this proposed project. The purpose of scoping meetings is to get input from the community regarding the potential environmental impacts of a proposed project like this. You will hear a presentation and have an opportunity to comment at this meeting. You may also submit written comments after the meeting. And if you give us your email address, the planner in charge of this case, Erica Gutierrez, will inform you of any future public hearings. The county takes your privacy and security seriously. Your microphones will be muted until it's your turn to provide comments. At that point, you may unmute yourself. If you're calling in, you can unmute yourself using *6. You will not be able to screen share or share video at any point during the meeting. Lastly, I ask that everyone be respectful to each other, the presenter, and to county staff. And with that, we're ready to start the meeting with a presentation from Lloyd Zola. Lloyd, are you ready?
I am ready, thank you.
Thank you.
Then Ian, if you could move forward a slide, actually 2 slides, one more. There we are. My name is Lloyd Zola. I am with Metis Environmental Group, and my sole purpose in working on this project is to help the public with this meeting to comment on what kinds of environmental studies should be prepared by the county for the project that I will describe tonight. The background is that the applicant has proposed a development of 504 attached and detached dwelling units on a 233.1 acre site. Now, the various requests that they have made of the county are a vesting tentative tract map to create 23 lots for development, which will include where the residential units go, as well as lots for open space, a zone change on 1.13 acres from agricultural A1, A-2-1 to C3-DP, requiring a development permit, an oak tree permit for impacts to 30 heritage trees and 424 non-heritage trees, and then a series of conditional use permits for the following. One is to establish a development program for the site and to permit residential development in the applicable zone. Second is to permit a use permit to allow development in a hillside area. A third permit would allow development within what is called in Los Angeles County a significant ecological area. then a permit for a density controlled development that would permit townhouses in A2 zones. And what density controlled development means is that rather than laying out 1 acre lots over an entire site, the same density that would be allowed in the A2 zone, it would be concentrated with smaller lots, attached dwelling units in a much smaller area, providing for open space. The last of the conditional use permits is for grading in excess of 100,000 cubic yards, and in Los Angeles County, a specific permit is required for that. And in this case, the applicant is proposing moving about 2,850,000 cubic yards total, which means about half of that being cut and then filled. So actually the cubic yardage is placed twice. Final permit that's being requested is for an administrative housing permit for affordable housing. Now, all of these permit requests require the county to take what is called a discretionary action. Different than a building permit, the county has discretion to require conditions of approval, approve or not approve. And because of that, the county is required to evaluate the environmental effects of this entire development before it can act. The first thing the county did was, in looking at these permits, it determined that an environmental impact report, and I'll describe what that is in a second, but that an environmental impact report must be prepared to evaluate the impacts of the project. Next. Now, a couple terms we're going to use tonight. One is CEQA, which stands for California Environmental Quality Act. And that is the law that governs our meeting tonight. That is the law that governs environmental review in the state of California. And because the county has determined that a significant impact could result, they're doing what is called an environmental impact report, EIR. So the terms I'll use tonight will be EIR for environmental impact report, CEQA for the California Environmental Quality Act. What tonight is, it's an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments about the types and extent of environmental issues to be studied in an EIR, in the environmental impact report. It's the first of several opportunities to participate in the environmental review process. And as I will describe as I move on with the presentation, there will be several opportunities also for the public to weigh in on the project itself. Next slide. Now, purpose of a scoping meeting, it's to take public comments on environmental issues to be addressed in the EIR. So our focus tonight is on environmental issues. This is not a public hearing on the project's pro and cons. That the county cannot consider pros and cons, whether it's a good project or a bad project, or somewhere in between, until they've completed the entirety of the environmental review process. So what we're looking at tonight are what studies should be prepared, what information does the county need about the environmental effects of this project before it makes a decision on the project. Now, the meeting is part of the public record and it is being recorded because the law requires ultimately creating a written record of tonight's proceedings. Thank you. Next. Now, there will be two different ways of providing comments. One, as I mentioned, because a written record is critical to the state law, written comments may be sent to Erica Gutierrez, either emailed at the email address shown here or a mailed letter to her at County of Los Angeles. The email address and street address will be shown several times through tonight. So if you don't get it all written down, we'll show it again at the end. If you wish to speak tonight and give verbal comments as to the environmental issues that should be addressed, use the chat function and to say that you would like to speak, give us a name as well as an email address. If you are participating by phone, just hit *9, and that was a raise hand feature that will let Alita know that you would like to speak, and then your name will be called when it's time for public input. You will all be given, all the people wanting to speak will be given up to 3 minutes to speak. So once we get to the public part of the meeting tonight, just listen for the name you posted in the chat function or the last 4 digits of your call-in number, and you will be called. Any written comments or all written comments will be accepted regarding the environmental issues to be addressed through July 15th of this year. Next. So, as I said, just listen for your name when you're prompted. Either if you're participating on Zoom, just hit the microphone button, make sure you're not muted. If you're on the phone, to unmute *6, and you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. And as Josh mentioned earlier, please make sure you're muted as we go through the presentation and others are speaking. Next. So let me explain the environmental process, and then we'll talk about the project and what the county believes should be addressed, and then we'll go to the public input. Next. Now, the start of the environmental process was the county's determination that there was a potential for a significant impact, and the county prepared what is called a notice of preparation. And that is a written notice to public agencies and to the public that an environmental impact report is being prepared. It requests input regarding the scope and analysis to be included in the EIR. And you'll see at the bottom, this is the city's website, and this will take you, this link will take you actually to the project page for this project, Trails at Lyons Canyon. We'll show this link several times through the presentation. Next. Now, once a notice of preparation was sent out, and that was sent out on June 16th. On June 16th, that notice of preparation identified that a scoping meeting would be held tonight to give the public and public agencies the opportunity to provide verbal and written comments on the scope of the EIR. And as I mentioned, the public review period runs 30 days, and written comments on the scope of the EIR will be accepted through July 15th. Next. So I've talked several times about the county is saying it's going to be preparing an environmental impact report. What is this document that's going to be prepared? First and foremost, it's a public information document. It identifies what are the physical environmental effects of the project. What physical changes in this case would occur if the county would approve 504 units of development at the site, and what changes in the physical environment would occur. It also provides a means for avoiding, minimizing, or mitigating significant environmental effects. So if the county determines that any one of the effects we'll be discussing later could be significant, then the county is required by law to provide means for avoiding, minimizing, or mitigating those significant physical environmental effects. It's important to remember that an environmental impact report, it's information. It's information on what happens to the physical environment. It is essentially a what-if document. What if this project is approved? What happens to the physical environment? It is not a recommendation for approval or not approval. It simply identifies what the effects are and how to minimize any significant environmental effects. Next. Now, once following this meeting, what will happen is the county, through a consultant, will be working on preparing what is called a draft EIR. And the consultant who is preparing the draft EIR is listening tonight because this is a very important part of the work they will be doing to understand from the public, what are the kinds of things that could occur in this area? What are the pieces of the environment that they should look at? Things that essentially, in some cases, only a local would know. And once that document is prepared, reviewed by the county, and the county staff says, yes, this document is ready to go for public review. There will be out for public review what is called a draft environmental impact report. There will be a 45-day public review period, at which point you members of the public will be asked to make comments on the content of the EIR. So tonight, we're asking what studies should be prepared. Then you will be given a chance, once that environmental impact report is ready for public review, on the actual studies that were done. What are those physical impacts? And the county will be asking for your input on the content of that EIR. Were the studies adequate? Were they accurate? Do they reflect what you believe would actually be the impacts? The county is then required by law to respond to all comments that are received during that final review period, during that 45-day review period. And they will prepare what's called a final EIR. That final EIR includes the draft EIR, all the public comments, as well as the county's written responses to all the comments received during that 45-day review period. Then and only then, after the preparation of a final EIR, is the county allowed to hold public hearings. And that is the point that the public will be asked to comment in front of the Regional Planning Commission and then the Board of Supervisors on the content of the EIR, as well as that is the opportunity for the public to speak in favor or in opposition to the project, as the case may be for any members of the public. Although written comments on whether you are in support or in opposition to the project will be accepted up to and through the actual conduct of those public hearings. Next. So now let me describe the project that's being proposed. And then if we go to the next slide. So this is the location of the project on the west side of the I-5 freeway along the old road north of the Cal Grove interchange. And you see the outline of the project there. Adjacent to it, there's a portion of the city at Cal Grove, city of Santa Clarita, that actually goes west, and you'll see the location of the project here. Next slide, please. And this is what is being proposed. This is the site plan. It identifies the location of 504 dwelling units, and where you see in the top right, individual lot numbers and the types of units that are being proposed, detached, attached condos, two or three stories, and then affordable senior apartments, the location of a rec center, number 7, and then a location for a future fire station. So 504 dwelling units, 148 acres of preserved natural open space that you see in lot numbers, such as in the top left, lot 21, 16 acres of private improved open space, parks for the residents of the project site, and then a 1.08 acre recreation center. All of this information, and as we go through the presentation, you'll see the link again to the project. This graphic and others that we go through are available on the at that link. So next slide. This is a breakdown of the development program, showing in the previous slide where those planning areas are, the kinds of units, numbers of stories. You see a mix of 2- and 3-story units, maximum building height anywhere from 26 to 38 feet tall, number of buildings, and then the acreage of each site and dwelling units per acre for just these development areas. Again, this is available on the county's website on the link for the project. Next. This is the open space map. So you see in the top right portion the outline of the project development area in the tan and the streets. The greens show the open space, the dark green being developed open space, the light shading preserved open space, and the trails, whether they are dedicated or not dedicated trails, and connection points to existing trails. So as I said earlier, 148 acres of preserved natural open space, 16 acres of improved private open space for the residents, and a recreation center. But this is the layout of the open space in relationship to existing trail network. Next. And so that is what, in a quick summary of what is being proposed. And there again is the page for where you can find this information. Next slide, please. The studies that will be done and the environmental impact report is going to address each of these issues. And I'll quickly describe them. Aesthetics, changes in public views. And that's important to remember, that is public views, not what somebody sees from their house, but changes in public views in relation to scenic resources. Agriculture and forestry resources, air quality, looking at emissions of air pollutants and the effect and health effects of air pollutants that would be emitted as the result of this project. The EIR, Environmental Impact Report, will be looking at changes to biological resources, changes to cultural resources. And by cultural resources, I mean historical resources, archaeological resources. And there actually is a section in the state law CEQA that the EIR will look at the potential for uncovering bodies buried outside of a formal cemetery. There also will be another called tribal cultural resources that you will see at the bottom, that is a separate but related subject. And that is looking at what we would normally call, what we have traditionally called archaeological resources, but from the standpoint of tribal nations. What are the resources that the Native American tribes find to be not historical, but find to be culture related, that they find sacred? So it will also look at energy, and the way energy is looked at is addressing whether the use of energy from the project would be wasteful. Geology, soil, seismicity, greenhouse gas emissions, global climate change, the hazards and hazardous materials, looking at both the routine use of hazardous materials, as well as potential accidents and hazards that could occur as a result of the project. Hydrology, water quality, flooding, land use and planning, and essentially planning policies. Mineral resources, would the project result in loss of important mineral resources? Noise, what changes would there be in the environment to noise, related to noise? Essentially, what noise would be caused by the project? Under the Environmental Quality Act, we do not study impacts of noise or impacts of the environment on the project, just the change that the project itself would create. We'll be looking at, or the EIR will be looking at, population and housing, public services, police, fire, schools, and so on. And remember I said earlier, physical environmental effects. So while the environmental impact report will look at what would this project mean in terms of demand for sheriff services, demand for fire services, the determination of what is an impact is based on if there is an increase in demand for a public service that requires a facility to be expanded or built, will that expanded or new facility have a significant physical impact? But in order to get to that answer, the EIR will actually look at what are demands on services. Recreation, looking at what kinds of recreational demands would there be. But again, remember, the final determination of significance is based on physical impacts related to building facilities or taxing not taxing is but increased usage of existing facilities. Transportation. There has been a change in public law in the Environmental Quality Act so that what transportation will be looking at is what's called vehicle miles traveled. The amount of travel that would occur. The environmental impact report will not be directly looking at traffic congestion. Under state law, that traffic congestion is a planning issue addressed in relation to general plan consistency, but is not an environmental issue. I mentioned tribal cultural resources, utilities and service systems, water, sewer, water availability, and water supply. Then finally at wildfires. So this is the list of all the issues that the environmental impact report will be looking at, and what we'll be asking you is in relation to these or any other physical environmental impacts you can think of, what are the kinds of things that the county and the environmental consultant should be looking at and addressing. Next. In addition to all of those, the environmental impact report is required to look at alternatives to the project. How might the project be changed, modified to reduce or avoid any significant impacts? By law, the county will be looking at what happens if the project is not approved. And by law, when the county looks at what happens if it's not approved, it will also look at what happens if the project or the site is built out based on current general plan and zoning. And the county and environmental consultant will also look at alternatives. How might the project be changed, reduced, modified, or whatever to avoid or reduce any significant impacts? Cumulative effects. And what this looks at is what are the physical environmental effects of the project we're talking about tonight in combination with past, present, and reasonably probable future projects. So what are the effects of essentially this project along with everything else that we can reasonably identify that would be probable to be developed in and around the site that could affect resources or affect the environment. And then finally, looking at growth-inducing effects by building this project, obviously it will add 504 units, as well as the recreation facilities. But is there a potential for this project, when it's built, to induce additional development in or around the site, either by creating demand for commercial services or in the infrastructure it provides? Thank you. Next. So I'm going to be wrapping up now, and then we're going to be calling members of the public for you to give your input. So what I wanted to just remind you of were, in addition to tonight, there will be additional opportunities for public comment, written comments on the notice of preparation on issues that should be addressed, the scope of the environmental impact report, via email or mail to Los Angeles County by July 15th. We'll be showing you at the end the email and physical addresses again. Comments during on the content of the EIR during the 45-day public review period. The EIR will be reviewed with the public in front of a hearing examiner. Again, opportunities for public comment. And then all those development permits, the project itself, either written comments on the project that will be presented to the Regional Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors, and you will have the opportunity to make presentations to the Regional Commission and the Board of Supervisors regarding the project itself, as well as the EIR. Next slide. And so just to remind you, written comments to Erica Gutierrez at this email address, or via regular mail to the Department of Regional Planning at 320 West Temple Street, 13th floor, Los Angeles, 90012. And we'll show this again at the end. Those of you who want to make verbal comments tonight, again, remember, use the chat function to let us know that you'd like to speak, and then provide us a name that we can call on. If you would like future notices, also make sure notices of future opportunities to provide comments. Please leave the county your email address to provide that. If you are participating tonight by phone, just dial *9. That's a raise hand feature. And so we will know that you wish to speak. Once you do that, just listen for Alita to call your name that you posted in the chat function, or the last 4 digits of your call-in number. Remember that written comments will be accepted through July 15th. With that, let's see, next slide. Okay, remember, when you're called upon to speak, make sure you unmute. For the record, because this is being recorded, give us your first and last name, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. I believe Ian will be showing a timer, so you'll know how much time you have. There it is, look at that. And then Alita will be calling names and let you know. So Alita, you're on. Let us know who the first speaker is, please.
Yes, we have Lynn Planbeck. Lynn, please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
There we go. Okay, my name's Lynn Planbeck. I'm the president of Santa Clarita Organization for Planning and the Environment, and here representing that group. And I would like to begin by saying I believe your notice of preparation is insufficient in that you didn't state the enormous number of trees and entire oak woodland that you intend to destroy with this project. Had you done that, including 30 heritage, I have to add, had you done that, you probably would have had 500 people showing up at this hearing in outrage that you would even consider a project like that. It's disgusting in this time of climate change, where we need every tree we have, that you would consider cutting down an entire oak woodland. When you discuss impacts, be sure to discuss how much carbon sequestration you will lose from destroying those trees. This is a severe wildfire area. The county just passed a safety plan, fire safety. The fire safety plan, so it's not in compliance with general plan policy goals. It doesn't comply with OVOV, where they were supposed to leave a green space around the outside of the city and then have greater density in the inner parts of the city close to public transportation. So I'm wondering how this complies with that policy goal in OVOV. You got a water supply assessment from the water agency, but it's insufficient because came out with a statement that PFAS and PFOA should not be in the water at any level. Right now, we have 40% of our wells closed, and we are blending water to have enough water to provide residents now. We blend in PFAS polluted water. And if the EPA is saying we shouldn't have any at all, how can we be approving new development until we have well-tested treatment on these wells that are contaminated with this pollution, with this PFAS pollution? So I think that that's something you really need to look at, and the water supply assessment is not sufficient. We will be looking closely at that and possibly challenging it, because it's really inadequate that they are going to go ahead and approve new development and rely on wells that are polluted. This is a mountain lion area in the Santa Susana Mountains. It's a connection to a major wildlife corridor. All of that has to be discussed in the EIR. I assume that all the studies that you listed in the NOP are going to be provided in the EIR, and that I don't have to name those, but the mountain lion's being considered for endangered species status. So at the moment it's endangered until they rule that it is or it isn't. So please provide information on the mountain lion.
Thank you. Next speaker is Marlee Bozert.
Hi. Hi, good evening. My name is Marlee Bossard. I live with my family in Stevenson Ranch and I grew up here. I remember the old project that was proposed for this land, and I recall it cutting through ridgelines and disrupting views from local residents and going far back into the open space we treasure so much. I like that the new project preserves 70% of the land as open space and preserves the ridgelines. I'd ask that the environmental review consider the public's access to open space and that they plant new oak trees throughout the project to help better connect the community with the open space. I think that the public's access to hiking trails is important, as well as the trail connectivity. I also think it's a good idea to keep the new community closer to the old road, as it makes more sense to have the homes closer to existing roadway infrastructure. I also like to make sure that the traffic is properly addressed in the environmental documents as well. Thank you.
We have Dave Bozert.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Dave Bossard. I'm a longtime resident of Stevenson Ranch. I'm also the immediate past president of the West Ranch Town Council, and I'm the chair of the City of West Ranch Committee. I've had a chance to review this project and think it's very thoughtful and will be a good addition to our community. I've looked at this development through numerous iterations of the plans, and this current plan, to me, I think is the best solution for the housing issues that we have going on in our state and nationally. And also preserves a lot of the open space. I'd also like to make sure that that open space remains as contiguous as possible, and that new oak trees are planted to replace any of the ones that are needed to be removed. Many of the oak trees on this property are in poor health, and the developer could replant a lot of new oaks so that we have healthy trees for the future. Also, on the open space, I'd really like to make sure that they ensure there is a good public access, not only for the new community, but for the existing residents adjacent to the property. I'd also like that the county ensure that there is an adequate landscaped fire buffer to be included with this project to ensure there's adequate defensible space to protect against fires. They've done that in the Stevenson Ranch community. They built these proper fire buffers, which I think have done a great job over the last 30 years protecting our neighborhoods. There's not been one house lost in our community to any of the wildfires that have happened over the years. And we've had some that have come very, very close. So I think this is a terrific project. There's obviously those few things that they should be looking at. And I thank you for the time that you've allotted me for comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Diaima Thompson.
Hi there. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I'm a resident of Valencia, and I've lived here with my family for nearly 20 years. Our family values access to open space and recreational amenities. I'd like to ensure the project preserves contiguous open space and better connects public trails to ensure recreational access. I want to make sure that local residents and the public have equitable access to open space and trails. I do like that there's a fire station location as part of this project that's being donated by the developer, from what I understand. And having another fire station in our community would be a great benefit for all residents here and the unincorporated communities. I hope that the fire department has identified funding to build the fire station. I also think that this development will help protect the existing homes in Sunset Point against future fire danger, as the development will be concentrated along the old road while preserving more open space and ridge lines. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Susan Stone.
My name is Susan Stone, and I've been a very long-term resident at Sagecrest Circle. So I've seen various projects, been in the planning station in the property that you're mentioning. I would like your environmental report to address the number of wildfires that have happened in that location. And actually, that is the place that most start off of Calgrove and in that area. Before, and I agree with everything that Lynn Plambeck mentioned. I was attending a meeting where the county presented its climate change plan, and it appears that a lot of what you are proposing is in direct conflict with the plan and meeting the goals of the climate proposal and plan by the county. Also, I would like to say that before this continues much further, at some appropriate point, you must assess the feasibility of putting houses in that location, because many of us lost our mortgage insurance being in a high fire zone, and we have had to secure extremely expensive out-of-state insurance at double the rates, and we are on the state plan for fire risk, and this greatly adds to the expense of what on the surface appear to be affordable homes. I'd also like to address who would be building and who would be ensuring that that fire station got built, and I'd like to make sure that that is assured before any of the planned development would take place. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Emily Swift.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Emily Swift. I'm a high schooler, and I help out with Scope and Lynn Plambeck. So this project, I believe that, well, first off, chopping down the oak trees, I disagree with incredibly, because, well, first off, if you chop off the old trees and then plant the new trees, well, it would take years for the new trees to grow. And if we're going to tackle climate change, studies show that older trees take in more carbon than newer trees. So, and we don't have, an indefinite amount of time to change climate change. Along with that, I mean, trees are obviously incredibly necessary for ecosystems, but they also provide shade. And like Lynn Plambeck said, there's not enough water. I mean, we have to limit the amount of showers we take at my home. There's not enough water to, I mean, I just don't think it's wise to make new buildings and new houses and things when we're already, so limited with our water supply, and we need to preserve our trees and our natural areas. I mean, if we're gonna save the planet, I know that's a big thing, but we need to preserve our natural areas. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Emily. We have Barbara Myler.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Barbara Myler. Having lived in the Valencia area for over 40 years, I am a resident of the unincorporated West Side community of Westridge, where I have now lived for over 20 years. I've had a chance to review the initial project and think this is a well-designed and a thoughtful plan for our community. I would ask that the county ensure that there is a complete review of traffic flow impacts on our community. I would also like to compliment the developer for working to preserve ridge lines and greater open space. I love oak trees. In fact, I have one in my front yard, but I've hiked this area and have noticed that there are a considerable amount of degraded and dying oaks. I think the habitat can be improved and better protected with this project. I believe the project should work to plant new oaks and create a new generation of oaks for our future generations. Thank you so much.
There are no additional speakers.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say one more thing, since you've had 3 people mention degraded oaks? I hope that you're going to do an oak study, because I haven't seen any good degraded oaks out there. There's oaks that have been fire damaged because we've had such bad wildfires. But I assume that you're going to do an oak study. If an oak study has already been done, I would request that I be provided with it. And this is a Public Records Act request.
Okay, thank you. Can we go to the next slide here? All right, yeah, this is Lloyd Zola again, and just a couple things I wanted to clear up based on some of the comments that I heard. Yes, as part of the draft environmental impact report, the technical reports upon which that EIR is based will be provided along with that. Typically, so those studies, and you did, as public members of the public, identify a number of studies that you are requesting be provided as part of the environmental impact report, and they would be made available at the time that's all ready for its public review. A couple of you actually used the term "you are preparing," or "you are proposing," I think was the term. I just want to remind the public that the voices you've heard tonight, mine, as well as the county's, are not the applicants. The county is not proposing this project. It is being proposed by a private landowner developer. Somebody had made the comment in passing, "I don't know why you're even considering this." Well, because certain things ought to be done to the project. Once that application is made following the county's rules on what information needs to be supplied for an application, the county is obligated by law to take the project through this environmental process, and then to public hearing. So the answer to the question, why is this all going on, is an applicant has proposed a development. The county is now obligated and is now reviewing the environmental effects of that project. Oak trees and wildfire would be part of that analysis. And so that is something to look forward to when that draft environmental impact report is out for public review. At that time, during the 45-day review period, is an appropriate time for the public to comment back, to look at those studies, determine whether those studies are adequate, whether they fully address the impacts you believe will occur, and go with that. I think one thing that was also requested is not likely going to be part of the environmental impact report, although it may be mentioned. Remember, I've said a number of times that California Environmental Quality Act requires physical analysis of physical environmental impacts. And you had identified, at least one of our speakers identified issues related to cost of fire insurance, availability of fire insurance. And while that is obviously a very important issue to be considered as part of the project, cost of fire insurance is a monetary issue, availability, a social issue that will be reviewed as part of the, so if you have concerns with that, the best place, most effective place to comment on that is in writing on the project itself, that you have these concerns about the project in comments to the Department of Regional Planning, and then in the at the public hearings. But you're not likely going to see that actually analyzed in the EIR itself. Wildfire will be, potential for wildfire, but cost of fire insurance likely not. So we'll leave this slide on for several minutes so you can get and write down the email address if you wish to provide written comments, either by email or by mail to Erica Gutierrez. The page on the county's regional planning website where you will find the information from this project is there. Again, if you would like notices of the project as it moves forward through the process, please make sure in the chat function you have provided your email address along with a request for those notices. And with that, I would thank everybody for participating. This was very helpful in terms of understanding the issues that the public sees with the environmental effects of the project. And over the next week to week and a half, I will be preparing a written summary of the comments and issues that were raised, and that will also be posted on the county's website on the page you see on the screen now. So thank you very much for participating, and we will leave this up on the screen for another few minutes so you can take down the information. Thank you again.